Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress. I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in. And it's my desire now to continue in the book Codeword Barbelon, 666 Danger in the Vatican, The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination by P.D. Stuart. This is book one of a two-book series. Most highly recommended books. The second of which is entitled Codeword Barbelon, Antichrist is a Woman, Alive and Well Again, both available at luxverbi.org, luxverbi.org. Call or write Lux Verbi today and get your copy of this book, and buy two copies, one for yourself and one for a friend or family member that is interested in discovering the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order that is upon us. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday in the broadcast, talking about Catholic action, the Catholic sodalities, the Jesuit-controlled sodalities, the various lay apostolate organizations, all secret societies through which the Vatican achieves this New World Order. And if you're following along in your book, I'm on page 323, and we're at the last paragraph on the bottom of the page. But by way of refreshing, previously we named many, or some, I should say, I barely scratched the surface, if you want to know the truth. There just wouldn't be practical. It just wouldn't be practical to list all the sodalities in the book. But he named several. Here are some. This is from Charles Chinnicky. He named the Order of Hibernian, Apostles of Liberty, Knights of St. Peter, Knight of the Red Branch. All of these secret societies are military secret societies, subservient to the Jesuit order, a veritable militia. And you can find this on page 283 of Charles Chinnicky's book, 50 Years in the Church of Rome. In addition to Chinnicky's list, the author includes Skull and Bones, Opus Dei, the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Peter Claver, Ancient Egyptian Order of SCIOTS, the Independent Order of Foresters, Catholic Order of Foresters, Ancient Order of Foresters, Knights of the Red Cross, Knights of St. John, Knights of Malta, the St. Leopold Society, and the Catholic League. He says a legion so vast and pervasive even than the combined armed forces of the United States. That is significance in spades, even more than the combined armed forces of the United States. Now, he continues, speaking of his own church, Charles Chinnicky, a priest for 20-some-odd years in the Roman Catholic Church, he says, quote, "It is to San Francisco that you must go to have an idea of the number of secret and powerful organizations with which the Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, prepares for, quote, the impending conflict through which she hopes to destroy the schools and every vestige of human rights and liberties in the United States," unquote. We quote verbatim from priests Sanborn and Heflin. Said priest Sanborn, quote, "It is clear that the Catholic Church condemns freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. Freedoms are held as sacrosanct in American culture. In an effort not to appear un-American, the Catholic clergy in the United States, for the most part, neglected these condemnations of religious and other freedoms, as well as of the Church. The only true Catholic stance in politics is to desire a constitution for one's country which recognizes the Roman Catholic Church as the one true church, unquote. Now that from a Roman Catholic priest admitting that the Roman Catholic Church condemns our liberties. Therefore, it condemns our Constitution and Bill of Rights and our form of government, which all are built to recognize our liberties. Liberties won for us by the Protestant Reformation. Our Constitution was a result of the Protestant Reformation and the lessons learned during the dark days when the Papacy ruled the world, controlled the information that a man received, and that particularly of the Scriptures. And now we'll continue. It says, read next the private words of Father Heflin to Professor Milford. Heflin, quote, the Roman state and church wink at the claims of the United States government of heretics. For it is expedient for the purposes of Rome that this Protestant nation go on in their blind confidence of security while Catholics prepare for the great conflict. Now, isn't this the thesis that we came to after reading the book The Ark and the Dove by J. Moss Ives? That's precisely what we learned. That Roman Catholicism gingerly came to this country in the Ark and the Dove, two ancient ships, and the warning among those ships was, don't start a controversy with the Protestants. Leave them be. Don't get into arguments about religion and politics, otherwise we'll create in the colonies what was the ongoing problem in Britain, religious persecution, both Protestants against Catholics and Catholics against Protestants. The idea was to make sure that Catholicism could survive unrestricted in this country so that in time it could make America Catholic. Now, let me read the quote again. The Roman state and church wink at the claims of the United States government of heretics, for it is expedient for the purposes of Rome that this Protestant nation go on in their blind confidence of security while Catholics prepare for the great conflict, unquote. And Milford replies, then you Catholics expect a violent conflict? At what time, Father Heflin? Heflin, when the Pope shall anathematize the government of the United States. I know not when that shall be, but I know that it will be, and that too not far in the future. By that act of the Pope, every Roman Catholic will be absolved of his oath of allegiance to the United States government. What I say here in private must be regarded as private and not intended for the public, unquote. So that's the secret aim. It's the same aim as we observed by a careful examination of the book, The Ark and the Dove, a Roman Catholic book written for Roman Catholics by a Roman Catholic. Now, this dialogue continues. Professor Milford then asks, and what will be the result of this event? We're talking about this uprising. Heflin, the priest, says, what will follow? Everything will follow for which we have worked and suffered and waited. At that time, Catholics will rise up, and the Pope of Rome will plant his palace here, unquote. Now, that almost sounds scriptural to me. I can't give you the passage, the book, chapter, and verse, but it's a twist of the Scripture. At any rate, This Father Heflin says the Vatican, or the institution of the Roman Catholic Church, will be planted here in this country. That's their intent, or at least that was the understanding of this Catholic priest at the time. Now the author writes, "Reader, do you understand what you've just read? The time's not far away when the faithful Roman Catholics of the Republic of the United States will, at the order of the Pope, exert their influence and power to the fullest extent in favor of their church's cause. And this order will be obeyed as if it were a command from God himself. Today there are millions of intelligent Americans who, despite what they may say publicly, believe in and maintain as a most sacred article of faith that most monstrous innovation of the Jesuits, the infallibility of the Pope." Yes, it's because of this belief in the infallibility of the Pope that drives every Roman Catholic to obey the Pope as though he were God. And this is the power that's going to energize this uprising, this future uprising predicted for this country by the Roman Catholic Church itself. And who, instead of thinking for themselves, allow a mitred priest in Italy to tell them which politician to vote for, what to think, and when to be absolved from their oath of allegiance to the United States. Read here what the Catholic Church waxes bold once said of itself, quote, many non-Catholics fear us as a political organization and are afraid that the Catholic Church will dominate and rule. We are working quietly, seriously, and I may say effectively to that end. So there's a complete and total admission. And this from a Roman Catholic publication, the Catholic magazine called The Missionary, dated June of 1909, page 69. As one writer so profoundly observed, quote, the Roman Catholic Church, with all its ramifications, forms one vast organization under the control and designed to serve the interests of the Papal See. Its millions of communicants in every country on the globe are instructed to hold themselves as bound in allegiance to the Pope. Whatever their nationality or their government, they are to regard the authority of the Church as above all other. Though they may take the oath pledging their loyalty to the state, yet back of this lies the vow of obedience to Rome, absolving them from every pledge inimical to her interests. Every pledge inimical to her interests, or detrimental to her interests. They're absolved of those oaths. And how many times has this subject come up? An oath from a Roman Catholic isn't worth the breath it takes to say it. They are bound first and foremost to their Pope, and he absolves them of all their oaths if they're detrimental to the Church. And it says, and the Catholic world, this is another Roman Catholic publication, endorsed by the highest dignitaries of the Church, including the Pope, in an article of July of 1870 states, quote, the supreme duty of Catholics is to obey the Pope and seek in every way, and especially by means of the ballot, we're talking about politics here, to render the Catholic policy effective in this country, unquote. That from the Catholic World, Volume 11, number 64, dated 1870. Quote, all Catholics must make themselves felt as active elements in the daily political life in the countries where they live. All Catholics should exert their power to cause the Constitution of the states to be modeled on the principles of the true Church. That's a quote from Pope Leo XIII in his encyclical letter of 1890. That's why you see all the political activism in the Roman Catholic Church. That's why you see so many of the most powerful political offices in this country occupied by Roman Catholics. And they're not in those offices to uphold the Protestant liberties of Protestants. No, they are in those offices to do the will of the Pope. And the will of the Pope is to make America Catholic and to destroy our Protestant liberties and to make this country an enclave of the Jesuit order, just as every other country in the world. It's a world government that the papacy seeks. As the vicar of Christ, the replacement of the Son of God on earth, he demands to rule this world, every man, woman, and child in it. And it is the Catholic laity in this country that are to engage themselves in whatever occupation they are in to bring the papacy to power in this country. And that's what they're doing. And they seek that ascension through politics. That's why Roman Catholicism is so politically active. That's why their priests tell them who to vote for and who not to vote for. That's why every Catholic looks to see who the Knights of Columbus are endorsing. That's who they are supposed to vote for, whoever the Knights of Columbus endorse. And it's the destruction of our country, as we've known it, where religious liberty ruled supreme. That will no longer be the case in this country, and that's what we're seeing taking place. The Patriot Act, for heaven's sakes, if you understand what the Patriot Act is about, you have to know that this is the Catholic action. This is the Eustacia effectively taking over our government and destroying our Constitution. All right, and it says, to what end was explained by Pope Pius IX in his syllabus of 1864, quote, the Church has the right to require that the Catholic religion shall be the religion of the state to the exclusion of all others, unquote. That's Pope Pius IX, 1864, just before the proclamation that the Pope is infallible. After, nearly 1,500 years, all of a sudden the papacy is infallible. And prior to that declaration of infallibility for the Pope in 1870, this monster, Pope Pius IX, wrote his syllabus of error, damning Protestantism, damning popular government, all of the liberties that are embodied in this country and practiced. He damned every one. Every one of them. This isn't anti-Roman Catholic bigotry. This is history. This isn't hate speech. This is history. And we just simply have to understand it. Now, in view of these bold and official pronouncements from the Catholic Church and several of her popes, what are we to do? Can anyone be faulted for agreeing with Dr. J.R. Rowe when he said in his book, Nehushtan, A Romance of Rome, that every person who holds any mental reservation in favor of the Pope, while outwardly swearing allegiance to the United States, should not be permitted to hold any office in the gift of the American people. In other words, any Roman Catholic who holds any mental reservation in favor of the papacy, in other words, any Roman Catholic who puts his loyalty first to the papacy and then to the United States, should not be permitted to hold any public office. And that's what was practiced in their early colonial period. In most of the colonies, which were virtually all but Maryland and eventually Pennsylvania, all were Protestant. And Catholics weren't allowed to hold public office. for this very reason, that they knew that Catholics' first loyalty was to the papacy, and that if Roman Catholicism was allowed to sit in government, that they would open the door for the Pope's control. It's common sense. It's so easy to understand why they wouldn't allow Catholics to sit in government. But now we have the Catholics in the most powerful positions in our country. And not only that, but the Protestant churches, the evangelicals, are following the political model of Roman Catholicism. They're uniting in league with the Roman Catholic Church on areas of common concern, like the definition of marriage and abortion and those types of things that Catholics and Protestants agree about. But that's only for a purpose: to get Protestants to help Roman Catholicism get even more control in our government. It's a Catholic agenda. And the ultimate target is the very Protestants who are helping them. Because history leaves absolutely no room for speculation what Rome's desire is. That is the extirpation and annihilation of heretics. And that's why I say on this broadcast that the ecumenical movement is spiritual and physical suicide. Joining in league with the Roman Catholic Church is a renunciation of Christ and a proclamation of Antichrist and sealing one's own doom. Because Rome is going to purge this country just like every other country where she gained control throughout history. She's going to purge this country of heretics. That's her divine right and prerogative. It's been demonstrated over and over and over, so much so that it's beyond credibility to doubt what Rome's intentions are for this country. And we've heard from the words of popes and priests themselves. Confessions right here in this book, quoted directly with citations given. This is not anti-Roman Catholic bigotry. This is straight from Rome's own mouth. And yet we're told by F. Tupper Saucy that at one time in the recent past, almost the entire Senate Foreign Relations Committee was governed by Roman Catholics. This is from Rulers of Evil, published 2001, page 12. Now, I've got a copy of this book. I don't think it's the same publishing year, but I'm going to read this passage from Rulers of Evil that supports this claim that the author makes, that almost the entire Senate Foreign Relations Committee was governed by Roman Catholics. When we get back from the break, I'll read from Rulers of Evil by F. Tupper Saucy. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back after the break.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Have you seen the Left Behind movies? Have you read the Left Behind fictional book series? Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. Because they see the world stage shaping to fulfill what they have been led to believe is sound biblical interpretation, a Left Behind rapture scenario, this false view of prophecy is reinforced in the mind, not only of its adherents, but also includes those who have been merely exposed to the specific media. Is it possible that false prophecy can be fulfilled? The rapture theories have always been in dispute. Pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib disputes have risen up in exclusively evangelical circles of recent history, so that when true believers don't suddenly disappear, this element will easily go by the wayside when all see a new Jewish temple begin to be built. Will this be part of the great delusion that will come upon the whole earth? It seems that this great prophetic delusion has already overcome practically the entire American evangelical and Christian world. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. To learn more, visit crosstheborder.org. That's CROSS, crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome back to the second half of Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. If you enjoy Inquisition Update, please support Inquisition Update by supporting FirstAmendmentRadio.com. We're reading in the book Codeword Barbelon by P.D. Stuart, and we were quoting F. Tupper Saucy. Important that we understand this. He says, we are told by F. Tupper Saucy that at one time in the recent past, almost the entire Senate Foreign Relations Committee was governed by Roman Catholics. In fact, in 1992, there was virtually no arena of federal legislative activity, according to the 1992 World Almanac of U.S. Politics, that was not directly controlled by a Roman Catholic senator or representative. Virtually every aspect of secular life in America came under the leadership of one of these Roman Catholic laypersons. Now, I'm going to slide right over here to F. Tupper Saucy's book. This is Chapter 1. F. Tupper Saucy gets right with the program right off the bat in this book. And by the way, this book's out of print, so if you can get a copy of it, I highly recommend that you do. Be a frugal shopper, because this book can be expensive if you're not careful. Now, Chapter 1, Page 1 of Rulers of Evil by F. Tupper Saucy. The subtitle is Useful Knowledge About Governing Bodies. And it says, when a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter announced in his 1992 Time magazine cover story that a conspiracy binding President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II in a secret holy alliance had brought about the demise of communism, at least one reader saw through the hype. Professor Carol A. Brown of the University of Massachusetts fired off a letter to Time magazine editors saying, quote, last week I taught my students about the preparation of about the separation of church and state. This week I learned that the Pope is running U.S. foreign policy. No wonder our young people are cynical about American ideals. Unquote. What Brown had learned from Carl Bernstein, I had discovered for myself over several years of private investigation. The papacy really does run United States foreign policy, and always has. Yes, Bernstein noted that the leading American players behind the Reagan-Vatican conspiracy to a man were devout Roman Catholics, namely William Casey, director of the CIA, Richard Allen, National Security Advisor, Judge William Clark, National Security Advisor, Alexander Haig, Secretary of State, Vernon Walters, Ambassador at Large, William Wilson, Ambassador to the Vatican State. And it says, but the reporter neglected to mention that the entire Senate Foreign Relations Committee was governed by Roman Catholics as well. Specifically, Senators Joe Biden, now remember he's vice president today, devout Roman Catholic. He has 2 honorary degrees from Jesuit universities. He's Barack Obama's alter ego. He's the one that runs Washington. You can bet on it. At that time, he was subcommittee on European affairs. Paul Sarbanes, International Economic Policy, Trade, Oceans, and Environment. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Near Eastern and Southern Asian Affairs. John Skull and Bones Kerry, Terrorist, Narcotics, and International Communications, and Christopher Dodd, Western Hemisphere and Peace Corps Affairs, all devout Roman Catholics. Now, Bernstein would have been wandering off point to list the Roman Catholic leaders of American domestic policy, such as Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell and Speaker of the House Tom Foley. In fact, when the Holy Alliance story hit the stands, there was virtually no arena of federal legislative activity, according to the 1992 World Almanac of U.S. Politics, that was not directly controlled by a Roman Catholic senator or representative. The committees and subcommittees of the United States Senate and House of Representatives governing commerce, communications and telecommunications, energy, medicine, health, education and welfare, human services, consumer protection, finance and financial institutions, that's our banking, transportation, labor and unemployment, hazardous materials, taxation, bank regulation, currency and monetary policy, oversight of the Federal Reserve System, commodity prices, rent services, small business administration, urban affairs, European affairs, Near East and Southern Asian affairs, terrorism, narcotics, international communications, international economics and trade, oceans, environmental policy, insurance, housing, community development, federal loan guarantees, economic stabilization measures, including wage and price controls, gold and precious metal transactions, agriculture, animal and forestry industries, rural issues, nutrition, price supports, food for peace, agricultural exports, soil conservation, irrigation, stream channelization, flood control, minority enterprise, environment and pollution, appropriations, defense, foreign operations, vaccines, drug labeling and packaging, drug and alcohol abuse, inspection and certification of fish and processed foods, use of vitamins and saccharin, national health insurance proposals, national health insurance proposals for those who didn't get it, human services, legal services, family relations, the arts and humanities, the handicapped, the aging. In other words, virtually every aspect of secular life in America came under the direct chairmanship of one of these Roman Catholic laypersons. Frank Annunzio, Joseph Biden, Silvio Conti, Kika de la Garza, John Dingell, Christopher Dodd, Vic Fazio, James Florio, Henry Gonzalez, Thomas Harkin, precious Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, Roman Catholic, served the papacy with his life, Edward Kennedy, John Kerry, John LaFalce, Patrick Leahy, Charles Lucan, Edward Madigan, Edward Markey, Joseph McDade, Barbara Mikulski, George Miller, Daniel Moynihan, John Murtha, Mary Rose Oker, David Obey, Claiborne Pell, Charles Rangel, Dan Rostenkowski, Edward Roybal. Vatican Council II's Constitution on the Church in 1964 instructs politicians to use their secular offices, their political offices, to advance the cause of Roman Catholicism. Catholic laypersons, whoever they are called upon to expend all their energy for the growth of the Roman Catholic Church and its continuous sanctification, and to make the Church, the Roman Catholic Church, present and operative in those places and circumstances where only through them can it become the salt of the earth. Now, if that's not New World Order speak, I don't know what it could be. They are to make the Roman Catholic Church present and operative in those places and circumstances where only through them can the Church become the salt of the whole earth. Vatican II further instructs all Catholics by their competence in secular disciplines and by their activity to vigorously contribute their efforts so that the goods of this world, that is all natural resources, all money, all industry, all property, all private property, may be more equitably distributed among all men. That is the global redistribution of wealth, just like the papal encyclical Caritas in Veritate calls for, and may be in their own way be conducive to universal, that is Catholic progress in human and Christian freedom, and to remedy the customs and conditions of the world if they are an inducement to sin, so that they all may be conformed to the norms of justice and may favor the practice of virtue rather than hinder it. Now, I could just continue to read this, but it verifies everything that we've been saying here on Inquisition Update for 2 years, and particularly since this recent encyclical came out. They've taken over this country, and there's no other explanation for what's going on in America today. Nothing that makes this much logical sense. This is a religious war. This is the continuation of the Counter-Reformation established by the Jesuit order in 1540, as put into practice by the Council of Trent. We're at war. We're at war. And we don't even know it. we're still sleeping in our tents. If nothing else, we're carrying an AR-15, a bayonet, killing people that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. The Pope is depleting our resources, depleting our military in this useless papal proxy war, while the real enemy lives among us. 25% of the human population in this country are Roman Catholics. And you throw onto that the support of the ecumenical evangelibellas, you've got a huge percentage of the people in this country are falling in love with the Pope. And he is our sworn enemy. He swore that he would destroy this Protestant land. That's what we've been reading about in this entire book. And so many others that I've read here on Inquisition Update. This can't be denied anymore. We can't remain in slumber while this is taking place. We can't keep this information to ourselves and expect God to just zap us out of here when the going gets tough. It's not going to happen. He says, listen to this. This is back to Codeword Barbelon now. Page 326. But the Bishop of St. Louis has warned us. Now, this is a Roman Catholic bishop, one of the most powerful Roman Catholic towns in this country, St. Louis, Missouri. The Bishop of St. Louis has warned us, quote, if Catholics ever gain a sufficient numerical majority in this country, religious freedom is at an end. So our enemies say, so we believe. That's a quote from the Shepherd of the Valley official journal of the Bishop of St. Louis, dated November 23, 1851. Now, on a calm survey of this evidence, and in my case maybe not so calm, can you reasonably disagree that papists ought to be required to publicly renounce their foreign allegiance and anti-republican doctrines if they are to be given any office of state? Yes, they must publicly renounce any loyalty to the papacy. And they must swear allegiance to our republic, our form of government, a constitutional republic, and uphold the liberties that every Roman Catholic loves in this country. Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, all our freedoms. They've lived under them for 250 years. Why would they be traitors to this country? A life and a land that they love. To bring us all under the jackbooted heel of the Pope. You know, it's Catholics in this country that are suffering as much as Protestants. All of our jobs are going overseas. Our banks have been destroyed. Our government is run away, out of control. They don't answer to the people. I mean, I listen to Roman Catholics on amateur radio every night up and down. They're no different than the Protestants. They don't like what's going on in this country. But you try to tell them the Pope is behind it? Not only are the Catholics outraged, but the Protestants are outraged. It makes absolutely no sense. It's testimony to just how deceived we are in this country. The author, F. Tupper Saucy, says, former Catholic priest Chinnicky revealed that the Pope has a, quote, number of secret and powerful organizations, these are the sodalities that we've been talking about in this chapter, with which the Church of Rome prepares for the impending conflict through which she hopes to destroy every vestige of human rights and liberties in the United States, unquote. And who is orchestrating it all? Priest Chinnicky says these secret societies are all drilled by the ubiquitous hands of the Jesuits. The Roman Catholic General Lafayette wrote, quote, it is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are ever destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests. for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty, unquote. And Jeremiah J. Crowley, who was a priest for over 20 years, warned, quote, today they, speaking of the Jesuits, are stronger in the United States than they ever were in any of the countries of Europe, which expelled them as a menace to the government, unquote. Shouldn't they be expelled from America also? But as some witty person once said, quote, it's better to resist the devil than to attempt to turn him out of the house, unquote. That's most true. Resist the devil, says St. James, and he will flee from you. James chapter 4, verse 7. For the devil always flees before stout resistance. But alas, this is not true of the men called Jesuits. Resist a Jesuit and he'll fly at you. So is it going to take any small measure to save our Protestant constitutional republic? Could we resist at all the Jesuits by remaining silent about this? What's at stake? What's at stake is being called a Roman Catholic bigot on the one hand and saving your country on the other. Not much of a choice, in my view. And my Bible tells me that I'm to have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but to reprove them. And how do you reprove them if you can't expose them? If you're going to let, civility and political correctness govern your every word, like we're so thoroughly taught to do, then you just simply have gagged yourself. You can't talk about this. And it's incredible that this isn't talked about, even by those who know about it. There's just not enough talk about it. Listen, we have to understand it's always been God's remnant, God's true people that changed the nation. And if there's any hope for this nation, it's got to be God's remnant people that speak up. Chapter 32 of the book, Does It Still Exist? Skeletons from 1776. This chapter is about the Illuminati. We're going to revisit the Illuminati again. And it begins with a quote from Robert Spencer in The Cult of the All-Seeing Eye, published 1964, page 48. Quote, what is one to do when in order to rule men it is necessary to deceive them? The author, P.D. Stuart, writes, there are men who, as investigation will show, are members of the Catholic or the Universal Illuminati, though they will never declare themselves to belong to it. On the other hand, there are those who confidently declare that the Illuminati no longer exists, even though they admit to know very little about it. That's usually my experiences, I'll tell you, on amateur radio. People deny this Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, deny it in the most vehement terms, and they know absolutely nothing about it. And how influential they are. All they have to do is deny it. And everybody latches onto that instead of looking into it. It says, the latter group show themselves to be unwise, for if they know little about the history or workings of the Illuminati, how can they pretend to know that it no longer exists? How could they speak so confidently of a secret society which, on its own admission, has adopted different fronts? These questions render their own answers. There are yet others who say that it is highly unlikely that the 18th century Bavarian Illuminati still exists in any tangible form. They, however, forget that the Illuminati's express strategy was always to morph and coalesce within the more traditional Freemasonry. Said Weishaupt, quote, "Our secret organization works in a way that nothing can withstand." In March of 1778, Weishaupt wrote to Cato, quote, "By this plan we shall direct all mankind. I have considered everything, and so prepared it, that if the order should this day go to ruin, I shall in 1 year reestablish it more brilliant than ever, though all should be betrayed and printed." So he's talking about if the Illuminati is completely outed, in 1 year I'll reconstruct it more brilliantly, more clandestinely than it ever was before. Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit priest. It says on September 25th of 2002, before he was forced to admit to being a member of Skull and Bones, President George W. Bush was asked about his involvement with that secret order. Feigning ignorance, Bush replied, "Does it still exist? The thing is so secret that I'm not even sure it still exists." Bush was later forced to give an admission, a one-line sentence in his autobiography, quote, "In my senior year at Yale, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society. So secret, I can't say anything more," unquote. This forced admission after his initial denial speaks volumes as to his integrity. We shall return to this in the next chapter of the book. As Bush initially denied whether the Order of Skull and Bones still exists, so too the question for us today is, does the Illuminati still exist? The Illuminati has had a very complicated and secretive history. In the London Monthly Magazine, January 1798, there appeared a letter from one Bochiger, provost of the College of Weimar, Germany, in reply to the book by Professor John T. Robeson, charging that writer with making false statements about the Illuminati and declaring that since 1790, quote, "every concern of the Illuminati has ceased," unquote. In an article posted in 2006 on a Canadian website stating that the Bavarian Illuminati was, quote, "nothing more than a curious historical footnote," unquote, and that, quote, "there is no evidence that any Illuminati survived its founders," unquote. However, historians Herzog and Schaff say that, quote, "by identifying itself with Freemasonry, the order was largely increased, freed from financial difficulties, and protected from persecution," unquote. John Adams, the second President of the United States of America, wrote letters to Colonel William L. Stone, a top Freemason, in which he exposed how Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, was using Masonic lodges for subversive Illuministic purposes. In his letters, we find very important information on the plans of the Illuminati for America, plans now in full operation in the said United States. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. We'll talk about it more on the program tomorrow. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host. cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.